Okay, I'm recording. All right, everybody, welcome back to 300 to 3,000, How to Grow Your Property Management Company to Scale. Man, that is a long title to a podcast.
Yeah, well, it was a long, painful ride, so we might as well make it a long, painful title.
That's true. That's true. Okay, well, good. Well, thanks for coming back with us. I mean, today we are going to dive into the core focus of GK Houses. Now, if you've listened to previous podcasts, Matthew, we talked about this in the VTO. We actually walked through what our core focus is and then what our niche is and the difference between the two. And so if you did listen to that, then you know our core focus is developing people, and specifically our people at GK Houses. And it's extremely important to us. And so I'm excited just to talk to you, Matthew, really for as long as I can remember, maybe not in the early days, maybe not in the super early house flipping days, but I do just recall this kind of intentionality about, just the way you did things. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it started when you started GK Houses, or I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear kind of how this has played out in your life, and then how that this passion for developing people and seeing people grow, how that's played out in your life and then in the life of this company.
This is going to be pretty funny, but when I was in college, I got into the Amway Quick Start business. And one of the things, listen, a lot of people can say a lot of bad things about that kind of multi-level marketing, but one of the things they did was they developed the habit of consistently listening to audios, consistently reading, which was a personal development habit. And I brought that habit out of my college years, and even when I was no longer involved in that business, and just continued to do that. So I've always been a voracious reader. It's probably one of the most fun things I do, the things I look forward to the most. I try to read almost every day, at least 15 minutes in some sort of book that's going to help me. And a lot of people joke because a lot of the quotes that come out of my mouth are quotes from books. So when people start reading books, they realize Matthew's not that smart.
Hey, Matthew, you didn't say that.
Yeah, it's not a Matthewism. He just really robbed it from a book. And I try to give credit where credit's due. I think I get frustrated a lot when I hear a quote where whether it's a speaker or somebody attributes it essentially to themselves, and I know exactly where they got the quote. But so I try to give books a lot of credit. But one of the things that I have been amazed at is, especially today with technology, you think about how awesome it is that somebody can essentially have dinner with somebody for 2 hours in a podcast and listen to a very successful person, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg or Ray Dalio or some of these people that are like pretty much people you would never get to meet on a regular basis, and get to sit down with them and hear somebody ask them questions and hear in their own voice how they answer those questions. I mean, what is the value of getting to have dinner with somebody like that? And you can do that for free in a podcast. Or somebody basically lives their whole life. They write a book about everything they learned during the 60 to 80 years of their life. And then you can read that book in about 10 hours and apply certain habits that they learned or certain things that they learned into your life. To me, that's just mind blowing if people will kind of grasp that. And so I instituted it in my life very early. And so that's one of the things that we've really wanted to do here at GK, is also because I've seen so much good come from it after years and years of the habit. And I really want other people to get to experience some of the same things that I've experienced.
So when did that, like when in the life of GK Houses, because when I came on board in 2014, this was already a part of the culture. It was a learning culture. It came from the top down, which there weren't many of us back in those days, but definitely felt it. So when did you really make it a part of who GK Houses is?
I don't really remember.
And how did you do that, or did you do that?
Yeah, I think I think your company ends up becoming just a reflection of you. And so GK Houses, by nature of the fact that I was reading books and I was listening to audios, other people started doing that. It's very infectious, I think. And when they see the growth in you, then they kind of want that too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, it was kind of unintentional at first, but I can remember when we institutionalized it in our 25K club, when we decided, hey, we're going to take the leaders of our organization, pull them aside and say, hey, we want you to focus on growth. What can we teach you? Because I figured out, and this gets back to our 300 to 3,000, 300 was all about how well I managed a house. 3,000 is how well I managed people, how well I led people. And so, it becomes a different business. And it's that whole metamorphosis of using an E-Myth thing, going from the technician to the business owner. We really had to take young people, because most of the people that were in this program were in their late 20s,
Right.
and teach them. We'd already taught them to be the technician of the property manager, but how do we teach them to be a leader? And if we didn't get we figured out if we didn't get intentional about that, then we had some problems on our hands, because we would put them in charge of a business and all of a sudden they wouldn't be that good at it, and all of a sudden the business would crash. And frankly, we've had some, not that businesses have crashed, but when there is no leadership, the business typically shrinks to the size of the level of leadership.
Right.
And so we've had to fight back and continue to grow our people very intentionally.
No, I think that's a great segue to even talk about 25K, because that was, just what you were saying. When you really start thinking about growing beyond your 300, then you really have to start thinking, like, how good of a leader am I, and how can I how can I see these other people grow? And really, when you start talking about it and you start explaining what it's going to take to grow a business to 3,000 units or doors, then everybody's eyes start to open and they say, you know what, I'm going to have to grow if I'm going to be a leader of people, especially when we're talking about people in their mid to late 20s. So 25K, this was the brainchild of Matthew. So this is how we did it. So this is how we kind of instituted 25K. It was, I want to say January of 2016, and Matthew had been tossing around this idea of starting a kind of like a book club, essentially is what it was, where people who we were grooming to be leaders in our company to go and run other markets, we were going to gather once a week. We're going to read a book together, and we're going to discuss the principles in that book and how they apply to us in our personal lives, but then also how they apply to us in a business. And I think I've got the dates right, but I just remember thinking, I don't know how good of an idea this was. Not everybody's a great loves to read as much as Matthew, because he loves to read. But man, we're, several years into it, and it's probably one of the favorite things that people love, like our employees love about GK, is just that time. Like, they're always saying, the feedback I've gotten is, I've never been at a company where they've actually let you take off to like develop yourself and kind of focus on that. So talk about a little bit about those early days.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. You can tell somebody something till you're blue in the face. One of the things I think people undervalue is people close to them. So if I was telling somebody something, then not that they didn't value it, but when they read it in a book from a different voice, it's like it sticks with them better, because that voice has authority when it's in a book or it's in a podcast or they've accomplished something. The same holds true when we get people from other leadership from other property management companies to come talk to our team. They can walk in and say some of the same dang things I've been telling our team. And then all of a sudden our team's like, yeah,
that's the best idea I've ever heard.
That's a great idea. And I'm like, we've only been talking about that for the last 2.5 years.
That's so true.
And so I think one of the things you do is you get somebody to come in that has authority, that and you can do that through books, you can do that through audios, you can do that through other people speaking, and audios includes podcasts, but you can basically bring in their ideas, and it feels like they're new ideas. Maybe they're painting a different picture, or painting the same picture a different way, and it resonates with people a different way. So you have a whole team of people that learn different ways. Some of them are visual, some of them are audio learners, and you've got to you've got to develop everybody, but so you've got to throw out a lot of different ways. And so we started with the book club. It came out very hot. It was great because I was reading things in books, and when I come and say stuff to people, well, it's just Matthew's newest book idea. But when they read it, it stuck a lot faster for them. And so that's why we started doing it like that. And we started going through books chapter by chapter together. And that started to get some momentum. People started to develop, people started to get excited
And
outside of just what we were doing at work.
And I think it's not only just hey, somebody else is saying this, but it was then the group getting together and talking about it, because then I was seeing things from somebody else's perspective, right? I was seeing things from this person's perspective, this person's perspective. Then we got to debate those ideas and talk about them. And so it gave us an idea to kind of flesh some of this stuff out in our personal lives and again in the business, which I thought was very, very valuable.
Yeah, and I have almost 20 years of experience in this business. And so you learn some things, but if you don't do a good job of institutionalizing that knowledge and do that in multiple ways, then your business is going to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. And so part of our big core focus of developing people is to institutionalize the things that Spencer's learned, the things that I have learned into our team. We jokingly call it brainwash. We think of it as a positive thing, though. We want to repeat the same success principles, the same success habits that people have learned, that we've learned over the years. And so we don't want people to we don't want them to take 10 or 20 years to learn the same things that we learned. We need them to learn it right off the bat and start learning some new things so that they can give us a higher return for their time.
Yeah. So talk to me about how you see, because we've been doing this for quite some time, how you've seen it impact the people that have been in that room. And as we grew, we expanded it not just to those people who were going to be leaders, but we also expanded it to every single person, because it is our core focus according to our VTO and what we're passionate about. And so talk about some of the changes you've seen in people over the years.
Yeah, I think that's very important. We opened it up to everybody about a year ago. We were kind of sitting around the table and saying, here we are focused and develop. Who will we let into our leadership development program? And then we said, that's dumb. We ought to have everybody in a leadership development program. So that's what we did. We put everybody in the program, and it has really made a change. I think people appreciate the value that we're trying to add to them. We tell them when they start with us that we're going to try to develop you personally and professionally. One of the things is we do have sort of selfish motives in doing it, right? Because who has not gone home and had money problems or relationship problems or whatever problems that don't carry over into their work life, where it affects kind of the way they think? And so if we can create a whole person that has success in all areas of their life, well, they can give more at work and give us a higher return for their time, because they don't have the brain damage of all the things going on outside of work. So if you think about it, it is kind of a selfish pursuit, but everybody wins in that scenario.
Right.
People have successful lives, and we have a successful business. And the way I say it is, we really feel like how well we build people, our success at GK Houses, our 25,000 house goal, is just a byproduct of how well we develop the people. So, even so much as this podcast, I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, I hadn't told you this podcast ought to be necessary listening for all of our team. Why is it important that we're externally telling everybody, how to get from 300 to 3,000? Wouldn't we want the person running Nashville or the person running Atlanta to know how to get from 300 to 3,000? So I'm thinking, how can we reuse this content to develop our people? And so that's one of the things I think we'll do is we'll not only are we going to externally do this for other people, but this is also it could be an internal podcast for our team to develop professionally.
Yeah, great thought. And going back to your point about how to develop the whole person is really, really important, because it's not as if they're going to avoid problems in life. There's always going to be problems in life, but how to handle those, how to manage those. And then, like you said, it just absolutely helps in the office. So we want to see a maturing of people, you know, well-rounded, just really well-rounded individuals. They're going to be happier at home, happier at work, more productive, like you said. And like you said, win-win. Something that Matthew has said a lot that I've stolen, and I say it on almost every interview where it advances to a certain point, is we want to see people shoot out of the top of GK houses, not fall out of the bottom. I mean, that is the truth. We've had some great people that we've loved that have been in those 25Ks, leave and start businesses and do some great things. So we're excited to see people grow and develop. They're going to put in a tour of duty at GK houses, and then they're going to go on and maybe do something else that they're passionate about, or however that works out. So,
yeah, when I watch sporting events and they show like a coaching tree, and you see there's one coach that's kind of everybody's worked for, and it all leads back to that one coach. I kind of want that to be us. I kind of want it to be the GK coaching tree, where they're out doing some really cool things, and one day we can say, not that we made them who they are. What we really want is to say we added value to them on their way to being whatever, a U.S. senator, a U.S. congressman, owning a business, owning a not-for-profit, and that some of the things that they learned here, they've been able to institute at their new job so that they have some success. Going back to your previous question, what have we learned? And you mentioned something about pain. Like, it's hard for people to avoid pain, and I totally agree with that. I mean, that part of pain is how we learn. And one of the best episodes, the best feedback we got of 25K, there's a video out there by Ray Dalio, and it talks about essentially how to create success. It's like a 30-minute video or something on how to be successful. And he talks about pain plus reflection equals progress.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we try to do is institute a reflection on the pain so that people can learn from the pain, and so that they can constantly be getting better. And that's kind of what 25K does. It talks about the pain. And look, we're not in there holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It doesn't get overly personal that I know of. I think people are very transparent because we want people to be who they are here at GK. And we know that everybody has problems. And look, we're not trying to replace a therapist or anything like that. But one of the things we want to continue to do is just invest in people, invest in people, invest in people. And I even heard Gary Keller say, why would I, and I was thinking about this recently, why would I spend all my time doing podcasts and writing books for others, but not spending time investing in my own people? And so that's one of the things that's hit me hard recently is, how can we invest more in our people? What can we do to provide them an environment where they can be successful, not just at GK, but at home, health-wise? We just want them to be, to feel like they're really getting ahead, that they're leaving GK houses better than we found them.
So let's talk about, for anybody who's listening who thinks, hey, this is something I could do with my people, even if they've got 3 or 4 people in the office. Let's talk about how this happens, right? So we talked about, we discussed it was just really a book club, and we would assign a chapter. We're going to read this chapter, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. Essentially, back in those early days, you were going through and just pointing out something that, that you thought was really important. And then
I'd underline something, and then we'd talk about it.
And then maybe somebody else would say, hey, I thought this was really important. Let's talk about it. How has this evolved over the past, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think people got a little tired of the book club, and we kind of morphed into a few different things. Where we are now is we have a software called Lessonly, and it's lessonly.com, and we pay for this software. But basically what we do now, because we're trying to empower 80 something people with lessons now. And what we're doing is typically we'll shoot a video. So either I'll shoot content, or I will find like the Ray Dalio content. So the Simon Sinek Start With Why, which is exactly what this is, what we're talking about now, our why,
Right.
GK Houses Why. and we go find a video, and then we'll have some kind of reflection type questions at the end of the video. So the video may be 15 or 30 minutes. Sometimes I do a video and it's only 5 minutes. One of the recent things I did was 10 lessons I've learned in property management. And one of the great things about Lessonly is it allows us to institutionalize that message. So maybe I can repurpose that same content. And when a new person starts here, I can, wouldn't it be great for each new person to go ahead and know the 10 things I've learned in 10 years of property management? I mean, that type of institutional knowledge is definitely something you want to keep replicating. And so whether you're doing it through a system called Lessonly, we warehouse all our videos on our YouTube channel, and people can just go through. And we've gotten really good at basically putting our videos into folders on YouTube, so that we have like team leader training, meaning people that are going to go run other markets. We have obviously marketing type videos. We have videos that are 25K club videos. So we're getting more and more intentional. But I think when you start out, it's just start out doing something. There's things you know right now that your team needs to know. And you don't need to write a book the first thing, but what you can do is, what is one lesson you can institutionalize today that you can teach them? Or what is one book that really had a big impact on the personality of the business? So for us, there's 3 books that are the personality of our business. It's Traction, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Good to Great. And so if there's a book that, you know, if I was starting out today, I would probably read the book Traction with my small team, because we're going to read about it, talk about it, maybe institute it. And then if you have a book or something that has had a profound impact on your life, especially as the CEO or the entrepreneur, the business becomes your personality. No matter what happens to GK Houses, it becomes a reflection of my personality. It sometimes is not super detail oriented, and we're starting to hire detail oriented people, but you just tend to hire people that are like you. And so you want to, I kind of went off on a rabbit trail, but you want to basically institutionalize knowledge. And what I would say is start with something, whether it's a book, a podcast, shooting your own video.
Yeah, I mean, it can be and your 25K can be 30 minutes, could be an hour. I can't remember what we started at. Maybe
it started an hour, and then we bumped it to an hour and a half because we didn't have time. Like, it was so good, we didn't have time. Right. And then we got to the point where it sucked, and we had to go back to an hour. I mean, listen, if you think that this is like a linear ride,
no.
We are big MVP and not most valuable player, but minimum viable product people. What I would say is start, and then, because you need to develop people. If you're going to grow a business of 3,000 houses, you need to develop people. I was actually just watching a long commentary on Facebook, and somebody had posted, hey, I really think, this person was at like 350 homes. I really think that I can make more money by just getting real lean and mean, 200 of my best houses, and I can make more profit off of 200 than with less headaches than 350. I agree. That's what we talked about in our first episode. Right. That they're figuring out exactly what we said. So to me, you need to decide if that's what you want to do. You've got like a different why. Maybe it's to maximize profit, maximize how important I am within the business. And that's great. If that's what you want to do, like if you're a great property manager and you want to maximize the dollar per hour you spend as a technician in the business, there is nothing wrong with that. Getting back to episode 1 or 2 or whatever that was. But if you're going to go to 3,000 houses, you have to make everybody else not just technicians. You need to make them technicians first, but you also need to make them leaders. You need to make them managers of people.
You know, something I would say, if you're just starting out, I think a book is, like Matthew said, is a great way to do it. If you can even find a book that has discussion questions, like the very first book we read was Today Matters. And at the end of every chapter on Today Matters, it had discussion questions, which I think that probably helped us as we first started, because really then you start answering these questions. Over time, you're developing trust with each other. because you're answering these questions and getting to know each other more and more. And so that would be one piece of advice. If you can do that, a book that fits you and has some discussion questions, that'd be great. Secondly, come prepared, I think, is another one. So come prepared. And we didn't always do this all the time, whether I led it or Matthew led it or somebody else led it. Come prepared to be able to ask very open-ended questions and have discussion. And if nobody answers, if nobody talks, you need to be prepared to say something based on some point that maybe you want to make as you're trying to develop people. Give them something to think about, because I promise, even if they don't say anything in that meeting, they will think about it. They'll internally process it. So those are just, I think, a couple of helpful
Yeah,
hints.
let me piggyback onto that, because I think
Yeah.
you make a good point. You, as a leader, one of the things that as we've grown is I have gotten to the point where I need to get better at communicating. Communicating becomes super important the bigger you get. And it probably goes from not being very important because you're just kind of, it's easy to communicate through osmosis when everybody's in one office, to crazy, like millions of dollars shift on our ability to communicate as leaders. And so I think that's another thing that I would focus on. I mean, when you get in these 25K meetings or whatever your leadership development program, if you decide to do this, and your ability to hold a crowd for a specific amount of time and clearly communicate, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, a message, and help them grasp the concept, is so super important. The other thing, there's really two other things I really want to talk about, because I think it's it is our why in developing people. Is, one of the things that we do really well, and we haven't been that great at it in the past, and your son's going through it right now, is our onboarding process. So that's another thing we leverage with Lessonly. And it was a rock for me, meaning like my 60-day goal, where I had to create an onboarding process for everybody at the company. What do we need them to know from day one all the way through day 90? And how can we intentionally bring them daily for the first 2 weeks, and then weekly for weeks 3 through 9 into our business, so that they understand the whole ecosystem of the business? And then we also came up with a new team member meeting. So when I'm thinking about a new team member and I'm thinking about institutionalizing knowledge with them, I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking of repetitions and context. And I tell them this. I say, look, it's going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, because we know way more, and we're going to be throwing way more at you than you can possibly understand. But we're going to keep giving you the reps. But as your context grows in the business, in other words, you start running your position, things are going to start to stick. But you're going to realize that, oh, they told me that day 1, and now it's day 24, and I really actually understand it now on day 24. But if we didn't give you the reps, we don't know when it's going to stick. We have to keep giving you the same information over and over and over again till it does stick, so that we have a whole person. One of the biggest fears I have is that we create a whole bunch of people with a training debt.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want to go train people 80 or 90% of the way. One of the great things about an 80 or 90% person is they're providing a lot of value for the company. But if you don't train them all the way, the last 10 to 20%, then you've created a training debt. And at some point, you're going to have to pay the training debt through adding another person. So maybe you have 10 people doing the job of 9 people. Well, depending on what that position costs, it's going to cost you money. So how can you make sure that people are 100% trained? And so that's also doing them a service. There's nothing worse than showing up at a new company, at a new job, and them not being prepared for you, them not having a vision for what you need to accomplish, and you feel like you're a burden to people. And if you're very intentional on the front end, our goal is to get these people up and running as fast as possible, because we want them to add value to the company as fast as possible. Well, guess what? They want to add value as fast as possible. So we've got to be very intentional about our onboarding process and our new person meeting. And honestly, the onboarding process and the new person meeting is the exact same content, just delivered in a different way. One of them is self-delivered through Lessonly, and the other is every week I get on with our new team members, and we have a 13-week program where it's just a circle. We just take them through the life cycle of a house at GK Houses, and we take them step by step through for 13 weeks. And wherever you get on, it doesn't build on itself. You can drop off when you get back there. So it's kind of a 13-week running GK new person team meeting.
And the feedback that I've gotten, I have trained 3 salespeople here over the past few months. And the feedback that I've gotten from this, how we've kind of institutionalized this training process, has been great. I mean, this is what they're saying. They're like, I've not ever been at a place where they've trained in this way, like this in depth, because it's that important to get these people, developed and understand the business, understand what they're doing. And the great thing is we're hiring really smart people. And so what they're going to do is take that information, they're going to make their position better. They're going to make the role better, which is the whole goal.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is I honestly think we're only 30% of the way there. I mean, I honestly think it sucks, our training. I think
it can be better.
They think it's great. And I'm thinking, man, how can we make this better? And I think part of getting to 3,000 homes is always not being happy with just good enough. Keep on pushing, especially when things are just good enough. Keep on pushing and making things better. Keep improving. Because if we're going to grow to our ultimate goal of 25,000 houses, we're going to constantly be training, bringing people into this funnel. And if we take it from training them in 90 days down to 60 days, just think of that time across 200 or 300 people. We've saved 200 or 300 months of people's time, and now we're now we're in a much better place. And you also think of how much can be self-led, because people love self-led training, especially when they first get started, because they feel like they're not bothering somebody. Like when you're training somebody is like on your hip the whole time. It feels like you're slowing them down, and nobody likes that. Like the trainer doesn't like it.
And there's no pressure. There's no pressure. You're not going to look dumb, because you're just watching the material and trying to absorb as much as you can.
Absolutely. And I just think if we could get, right now we're probably bringing up to 30 to 40% self-trained. If we could get somebody 70, 80% self-trained, and they could literally come in and we could finish them off with a trainer or some sort of shadowing, that would be a really awesome goal for us.
And something else I think we do, Matthew mentioned communication is so vitally important. And that's some of the feedback that we've gotten is we need to communicate more and we need to communicate better. As you can imagine, the company has grown from 8 people in one conference room where we just talked right here, everybody's sitting in a chair, to now, up to 70 people and growing. So communication is a big deal. So what we started doing, or Matthew started doing on Fridays, is ask anything. And to me, this is another way that you can develop people, because it gives the whole company the opportunity to log on to Zoom and ask whatever questions they want to know of whoever is leading the meeting. It could be Matthew, which is probably 85, 90% of the time. Every once in a while, Matthew will ask me or somebody else on the leadership team to do it, but it's a great opportunity for people to say, what books are you reading? How did you handle this situation? What are we doing as a company about this? What about this? And to me, I think that just, again, opening up lines of communication, not only to disperse information, but also industry knowledge and some insight as to, hey, what's 20 years in the business? What is somebody who's been in the business 20 years? How do they respond to X or Y or Z? So I think that's something else that's been very, very beneficial, and people look forward to it, even though it's only 15 minutes on a Friday morning.
Yeah, it allows me to leverage a little bit of time and get our message out there. I always try to think of a nugget or something we're thinking about as a leadership team, because people want to know. I mean, people are desperate for knowledge. And as you start to grow your business into other markets, you need to be very intentional about communicating with them. You don't realize what's going on in your head. People want to know. And so we've had to get really good at just disseminating that information out to the team, and Ask Anything, I think, has been a great way to do that. And I think people do enjoy it. And I think people like seeing everybody's face on a Friday.
So if you follow the EOS model, there's something in there that we do every rock period. It's called the organizational checkup. And one of the questions that always sticks out to me is, and you can help me remember the exact question, Matthew, but it's about your leadership team is transparent and open and honest and exudes a high level of trust, or something like that. To me, that's all about communication and transparency, and things like Ask Anything help, I think, with that, because that's something I'm always looking at. What do they really think of the leadership team? Do they think that we're in some little, huddle trying to keep things to ourselves and not sharing information? Or are we very open and honest with them and transparent?
Yeah, this goes back to Ray Dalio's book, Principles. He talks about radical transparency. We call it uncomfortable transparency. But the whole point is, we're going to tell our team everything we can possibly tell them, even if it's a little bit painful for us or embarrassing for us to tell them. Now, look, if we sign an NDA with a company and maybe we're buying it, we may not disseminate that information. We may say, hey, we're talking to a company or whatever, and certain people only need to know to protect that company. But pretty much, I mean, whether it's P&Ls or balance sheets or whatever, people know what's going on in this business and can have access to it. We record a lot of our meetings, and people can have access to those. So we try to get information out as quickly as possible. And just to loop this back around, I mean, that's part of investing in people, is giving them the information. One of the things, one of the books talks about is, if we could get everybody rowing in the same direction, then we could basically conquer any business in any industry. And that's one of the things we think about a lot, is we need to keep giving people direction and give them the why we're headed in that direction, so that they can make the frontline decisions that on a daily basis that help get us to that 25,000 house goal.
Yeah. Good stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to developing people? I think it's been a really good show.
No, this has been awesome. I think, again, the message is our ability to develop people equals our success. And when we choose to forget that, or we get too busy doing other things trying to create success, that's when we seem to trip up. The more we invest in our people, the faster we seem to get to our goal.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us again. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of 300 to 3000. Peace out.